Hey guys, welcome to Conceptual Geometry, Lesson 5.1, Midpoint. What is a midpoint of a line segment? Midpoint is the point halfway between the endpoints of the segment. So it is the middle of that segment. All right, so now let's find the midpoint of the line segment with endpoints 4, 6, and -2, -2. First thing I would want to do is plot those points. 4, 6 is going to be slightly off this grid. They didn't give us enough room, but that would be right there. -2, -2 would be right here. If you have a straight edge, connect those two. So how am I going to find the middle? I know it's going to be in here somewhere, but I need the exact coordinates. Here, here. I don't know where it's going to be. So what I'd like you to do is create a right triangle. Use dashed lines using those two endpoints. And now I want to find the length of this side. Because if I can find the length of this side, I'll divide it by 2 and then give me the midpoint here. And it's easy to do when I can count blocks. Can't really count blocks when we're going diagonal. So the length of this side is 6. Half of 6 is 3. So 1, 2, 3. This is the middle. All right, so let me sketch that going up here. All right, because I'd divide this into 3 and 3. Let's do the same thing over here. If I count the number of blocks on this side, I get 8. Well, 8 divided by 2 is 4, so I'm going to go up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then go across. So that divides this into 4 and 4. So I think you can see now that my midpoint is going to be right here. What are the coordinates of that midpoint? 1, 2. So the midpoint equals 1, 2. Now, we are not going to sketch every single one of these. We're going to be able to do this quickly, but I want to find a pattern. Where did this 1 come from using these two coordinates? Where did the 2 come from using those two coordinates? How did we get this length to be 6 if we don't count blocks, but we look at those values? Here's what we did. All right, to get the x's, so that's this value, what we did is we took 4 plus -2. All right, so what did that give me? That gives me 2. Then we took 2, divided it by 2, and we got 1. All right, well, how about the other one? How about using these y values? How did we get that? I took 6 plus -2, that gave me 4. 4 divided by 2 gives me 2. That's how we can get these algebraically without using a grid every time. So we have a midpoint form that's going to make this a lot easier. Midpoint, which is denoted with a capital M, equals x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. This is going to be one of the formulas that we use over and over and over again this unit. Now, if you think about it, what are we doing when we add two numbers and divide by 2? Well, we are taking the average of the two coordinates. So mathematically, it's very simple. It's adding and dividing by 2. Just make sure you understand the notation. We are finding a point, so we must have parentheses, and we must have a comma between the two values. This is just going to end up being a number, and this will end up being a number. Okay, so let's try using that formula. First example, find the midpoint of A and B. Okay, so use your notation, capital M equals, parentheses, x1 plus x2. The x values are simply the first numbers you see in each point. And it's plus. Here's probably the most difficult part of this unit, is dealing with the negatives. So I always write down 3 plus, and then whatever the other number is. In this case, it's -1. I'll divide that by 2, comma, 7 plus 3 divided by 2. Because this is the first example, I'm going to write out an intermediate step here I don't normally do. I'll add the top numbers. 3 plus negative 1 is 2, so 2 divided by 2. 7 plus 3 is 10. 10 divided by 2. I usually skip this step because it's pretty easy to add two numbers and divide by 2, but I just wanted to show you the process. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And that is the midpoint of the segment formed by A and B. Okay, let's practice another one. I'll show you really what my workflow is and the work I expect you to show. You can't just give me this. You need to give me this step right here, plugging in the numbers, and then you can go right to the midpoint if you want. You can eliminate this intermediate step. So let's practice on this one. All right, I want to find the midpoint. So I need to take my two x values, in this case negative 2 plus 3, and divide it by 2, comma, the two y values, 5 plus 1 divided by 2, close your parentheses. Now here's the part I usually do in my head. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1. 1 divided by 2. I usually leave these as a fraction. I do these without a calculator, so I don't want to worry about decimals, but if you like decimals, and you can do it in your head, 0.5, that's great. If you want to put it in the calculator and get a decimal, that's fine as well. But you are totally able to just to leave that numerator over 2. Okay, so that's 1 over 2. And how about the other one? 5 plus 1, this is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So that gives me 3. And this right here is typical of what I would expect to see on a midpoint problem, all right, in terms of the amount of work. All right, the next one. I want you to do this one on your own. Pause the video, try it on your own, and then resume the video, see if you did it correctly. Okay, so the midpoint here is going to be 2 plus 9 divided by 2, comma, negative 2 plus 3 divided by 2. Now we'll just add our numerators. 2 plus 9 is 11. That's an odd number. I will just leave it 11 over 2. If you put 5.5, that's right. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1. I'm going to leave that 1 divided by 2. If you put 0.5, that's also acceptable. Okay, number 4, midpoint. Again, pause the video, do this on your own real quick. Resume the video, fast forward to see if you got it correct. The two x values are 2 plus negative 2 divided by 2, comma, negative 3 plus 7 divided by 2. Okay, well, this is interesting. This is the first time we're seeing this. 2 plus a negative 2 is a 0. 0 divided by 2 is just 0. So x coordinate is 0. Negative 3 plus 7 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. My midpoint there is 0, 2. Okay, example 5, midpoint. The two x values, negative 7 plus negative 11 divided by 2, comma, 3 plus 0 divided by 2. Numbers are a little bit bigger here. Negative 7 plus negative 11 is negative 18. Negative 18 divided by 2 is negative 9. And 3 plus 0 is 3. I'll just leave that 3 over 2. If you put 1.5, that's equally correct. And the last one on this page, midpoint. The two x values, 1 plus negative 4. It's so important that you keep that negative. Divided by 2, comma, 5 plus 7 divided by 2. All right, 1 plus a negative 4 is negative 3. I'll leave that as a fraction. You could put negative 1.5 if you want. I'll leave it negative 3 over 2. And 5 plus 7 is 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So there you go. Pretty straightforward. Again, the key here on these is watch out for those negatives. It's always a plus between them. Please just take your time and write it out like I do here with the substitution. Then you can maybe take a little bit of a shortcut to come up with your final answer. All right, next topic. If the endpoints of the diameter of a circle are negative 2, and 0, 2, what are the coordinates of the center of the circle? Now, in this particular problem, I just need to come up with the coordinates of the center of the circle. So obviously here we're talking about the midpoint, right? The midpoint of the diameter is the center of the circle. And when we're on a grid, I personally prefer to be visual. You don't have to do it this way. You could totally use your formula on these two coordinates. But look at this picture. I think it's easy enough to get the midpoint of that diameter. And here's how I would do it. first of all, connect them. You have to show some work. So you would show me, I think visually, it's kind of easy to see that that's going to be the center. -1, 0. So what I would show for work is show me that you found that midpoint by finding how much you have to go up and over in each direction. So up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, therefore that has to be the midpoint. It couldn't be up here because then you're not going up and over the same amount each time. So basically you're creating 2 equal steps, and that midpoint would be at -1, 0. Well, what if they don't give you the grid? Then I would need to use my midpoint formula. So here, find the center of the circle. So I see center, I'm like, oh, that's midpoint. And since I'm not on a grid, I have to use these two in the midpoint formula. All right, so let's write that out. Midpoint equals, parentheses, x plus x, 5 plus -2 divided by 2, comma, y plus y, 7 plus 3 divided by 2. All right, so this here gives me 3. That's an odd number. I will just leave that 3 over 2. And this gives me a 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And there's the midpoint. I don't need to sketch it. I use my formula. I know that's correct. And the last example, all right? So now I'm giving you an endpoint and the midpoint. So visually it looks like this. Here's point A, here's my midpoint. What is point B? You know these two. So I don't use my formula here. I stack. All right, so the method here is to stack. Let me show you what I mean. I want you to take this midpoint coordinate and write it underneath here, like so. What I want to do is I want to find the pattern to go from A to M, then I have to go that same distance from M to the other endpoint. It's a way to do algebraically what we did in this problem. If I know these two and I want to find that one, here's what I do. I create a step, up 2 over 1, and then I repeat that step, up 2 over 1, and then I could find these coordinates. Well, here's what it looks like algebraically. We are going to ask ourselves, what did I add to 4 to get to -3? Well, that's a -7. So then you have to repeat that process here. Likewise, we do with the y's. What'd you do to go from 6 to 0? I subtracted 6. So then I have to do the same thing here. So what does that give me for my other endpoint, B? -3 minus 7 is -10. And then here, 0 minus 6 is -6. There's the other endpoint. All right, let's practice this once more together. Then I want you to pause the video and try the last two on your own. So for letter B, I'll stack it, bring down M, 4, -8. And now 2 plus what is 4? 2 plus 2. Now if you want to do the x's first and then the y's, that's fine. So I'll continue that pattern. Add 2. 4 plus 2, that has to be 6. Well, with the y's, I went from a -3 to a -8. That means I subtracted 5. So then I have to take -8 and subtract 5, and that's -13. Okay, try these last two on your own. You can pause the video and then resume. I'll just keep going. All right, so for C, bring down M, which is 2, -5, and then find the pattern. You went from -1 to 2. That means I added 3. And then to get to my endpoint, I have to take that and add 3. 2 plus 3 is 5. -2 to -5, I subtracted 3. And then -5 minus 3 is -8. So for that one, you should have gotten 5, -8. And our last one. So we stack. M is -3, 7. Here's what B is going to be. So what do we do with the 4? To go to -3, I subtracted 7. So I have to subtract 7 again. -3 minus 7 is -10. And then with the y's, I went from 0 to 7, so I added 7. and then I add 7 again. 7 plus 7 in that case is 14. So I get negative 10, 14. Okay, guys, that concludes Unit 5, Day 1 notes. Thanks for watching, and as usual, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll see you in class soon.